First thing y'all need to know is Portman can talk me into anything. I want you to be gratified, but I want him to have the credit. This is the only such speech I'm giving this spring. Not going to any other state, not going to any other political event outside my own state. Got a lot on our plate there. Our full attention is there. But just as that trip Rob mentioned to try to provide some trivial help to his spectacular Senate win was the only time I left Indiana, except for a few fellow governors. Tonight's the only event of its kind. And I'm very, very careful about predictions. My track record's not this good. Here's one I make with full confidence. You here in Ohio have shared Rob Portman now with the rest of us, the rest of the nation, in 2 cabinet jobs. I predict that you're going to have to do that a 3rd time sometime along the line. His nation will call him yet again, and I couldn't call a finer person or a better public servant. Now, I may not be going to a lot of them these days, but I've been to a few of these wing things, and you all know how to throw a good one, Alex. You really have got this well organized. You're moving it right along. Very efficient. I appreciate that. I know the audience does. Catherine, how to sing? That's how to sing the Star Spangled Banner. I mean, unbelievable. And Charlie Winburn proved that a prayer need not be an hour long or lengthy to be profound and moving. And we're grateful to you for that. You know, my preacher says it's not how long you pray, it's how often and how sincerely. I've got a friend whose wife believes that very fervently, and she will jump him if he skips it a single meal. And he claims that over his cornflakes a few months ago, she said, "Bruce, I didn't see you pray." He said, "Well, I did." She said, "I didn't hear you." He said, "I wasn't talking to you." Well, Charlie, you spoke well for us all. We thank you for that. I'm practicing what now is turned out to be a new Midwestern ritual or custom, fairly recent vintage, but apparently it's the thing to do these days. Things aren't going entirely well in your home state, you run for refuge to a neighboring state. Our friends, the Democrats of Indiana, took off a couple days ago and haven't come back yet. I said today to the media, I said, you know, if this goes on much longer, they're going to need to rebrand themselves because whatever this is, it's very anti-democratic to stop the whole process and attempt to subvert, really, the outcome of an election just by running away. And somebody suggested if they need a new name, the Flea Party wouldn't be a bad place to start. I like that. So they chose Illinois for their getaway. And that was well chosen. That's a natural. Illinois is what our state would look like if they were still in charge. Dead broke, can't pay its bills, raised taxes many, many times, crumbling infrastructure, and a lousy business climate. The whole thing is enough to make me support term limits for legislators. We don't have them in Indiana. We have them for governor. People ask me sometimes, do you have term limits? Yes, we have a statutory 2-term limit for governor. Then there's the Sherry Daniels term limits. And the penalty if you violate those is, that's my wife, the penalty if you violate those is much more severe than anything Indiana could do to me. And I may decide to favor term limits for legislators, and they have a good system in Illinois. It's 2 terms over there, 1 in office, 1 in prison. I really think of I can't say this stuff at home. That's why you have to indulge me just a little bit. I really think it's only fair that we sent them over there because we've been receiving Illinois governors at the Terre Haute Penitentiary for a long, long time now. So, sort of an exchange program. I have to apologize also for my incapacity. This is, you know, a temporary, not a permanent sling I'm in here. The press asked me early this year. They said, you know, you're really on a roll. Had a great success in the election. Had this big, ambitious agenda. Looks like you're going to pass. They said nobody's calling you a lame duck. I said, well, you know, lame ducks can fly. Today they said, yeah, okay, how about one-winged ducks? How do they do? And I guess I'm one of those. Let me stop the frivolity for a minute, tell you what came to my mind since this little business started. Two of the last three men who represented our party in the presidential election, John McCain and Bob Dole, lost the use of an arm. Neither one of them, as far as I know, can raise his arm halfway to his shoulder or operate it in many ways. And in 3 or 4 months, I'll have my arm back. And I didn't lose it in the service of our country. I lost it in the gym and the swimming pool, and I'm not sure where else. But I would just invite you to think, as I've been thinking every morning, about those two men and so many like them who gave up something permanently that we all take for granted in serving this country and defending our liberties. And I hope you'll remember each of them in your thoughts and prayers later on tonight. So for my one-of-a-kind getaway, I think I picked the right state too. I mean, I came to Ohio, which is a state on the way up. Can't be said I don't think of Illinois from anything I've seen, but you're on the way up. You just elected a fantastic new senator. He's going to play a huge role in the big national debate that's unfolding now. You elected a new governor, new General Assembly, some new state officials. Better days are ahead for this very, very deserving state. You know, I got to be honest, I have some mixed feelings about this. My friend, former Senator Alan Simpson used to say, mixed feelings are what overtake a father when his daughter comes home from a date with a Gideon Bible under her arm. That always takes a minute. You'll get there eventually. Yeah, I have mixed feelings. You know, I have to tell you the truth. Y'all have been fun to compete with the last 6 years. You know, but this, by the way, was true of so many of our other neighbors. Michigan, poor Michigan, Illinois, Wisconsin, Iowa, for reasons best known to them. People continuing somehow to believe that you just spend more money, tax people more, mistreat a business as a nuisance or a necessary evil to finance the activities of the important sector of government, and everything just work out. And we have been able to set ourselves in Indiana as a contrast to that. We had just been in that shape, and I hope that you will have the same fulfillment we have had in coming from where we were to a somewhat different position today. I won't take your time to talk much about it. I always say that telling people about activities in your own state is like showing home movies. They pretend to be interested, but they're really not. So I won't say much about it except where maybe it's directly pertinent. But I'm just hoping that you and your governor and all of you supporting him will seize this opportunity. I want you to know you can make so much difference in a short time, probably more than you suspect. That was our experience. I haven't talked to Kasich for a while, but I'm a big country music fan, mainly because it's the one genre that has a sense of humor, right? So you got these great country songs like "Got You Off My Conscience," but at least you got you on my conscience, but at least you're off my back. You know, things like that. And he's got away with women, but he just got away with mine. Or my wife ran off with my best friend, and I sure do miss him. But the title I want to remind Kasich about, which is a reminder to act now, act decisively, seize opportunities in the public interest, is that great country classic, If I'd shot you when I should have, I'd be out of jail by now. My previous sarcasm aside, we are rooting for you. And I'm very hopeful and confident about Ohio, about the whole Midwest. I'll just tell you that, if we do the right things in our part of America, I see no reason we cannot be a leadership region, the leadership region of this country. Many of the wounds our coastal brethren are experiencing are self-inflicted. But they are making it impossible to hire someone and make a buck in places like California and New York and Massachusetts right now. And if we can figure ourselves here in the middle of the country, in a time when I believe transportation and energy costs are going up, not down, our location, our workforce, our heritage of high productivity, all will work for us. And so I just encourage you to grab the opportunity you have made possible. People in this room and your fellow allies around the rest of the state. And you'll start shaping Ohio up very, very fast. We've been treated to a very interesting spectacle just in the last few days. An interesting time to be here. Apparently this traveling road show, and there's a lot of that in it, of government union people is setting up shop, or might be in your state too. And this is troubling in its way, but in the end, this may prove to be a very, very important and even positive event in the life of our republic. I try to be charitable to folks who have to go on television all the time and chatter. I think if any of us did that, we'd say some pretty silly things once in a while. I know I would. But I heard a real good one, I thought, Sunday morning. And I was listening to the show in which Ms. Amanpour is the host. And so she's showing pictures of Madison, Wisconsin, and so forth. And she says to whoever she was there with, she says, well, will this be the Tunisia of the United States? And I wanted to reach through my screen, grab the poor lady by her Gucci lapel, and say, Christine, it's not Tunisia, it's Greece. These are not the dispossessed underdogs of society. The people up there demonstrating, like government employees everywhere, make a lot more money than the taxpayer who's paying their salaries. A lot more. Federal employees make 50% more. Teachers in Indiana, by the way, I happen to support this end of it, make 22% more. But that doesn't count the benefits. That doesn't count the almost total job security. And it certainly doesn't count the shorter work year. There may have been a time when government employees needed protection, needed reform, but that's a long time ago. I will remind you that some of the strongest proponents of the still vital and precious liberty of collective bargaining, people like Samuel Gompers, Franklin Roosevelt, as fervent as they were about collective bargaining, thought it had absolutely no place in the public sector. But we got where we got. So as you watch, or as you watch with your neighbors, what is happening in Madison, I'll distinguish Indianapolis in a minute, what may be on its way to Columbus. Just make sure everybody's got the scorecard right as to who's who here. This is a privileged elite we're talking about. Public employment grew during this recession while millions and millions of private sector jobs were lost. Public salaries went up while income in the productive sector of society that pays all the bills for government was shrinking. We're out of whack. And maybe the spectacle of these very well paid, completely protected, generously benefited employees stomping around as though something's being done unfairly to them will be one of the, as the people like to say now, a teaching moment for America. Maybe we can use it that way. You know, I'm not an engineer, but I know that in a general sense, the most efficient systems, the ones that lose the least energy, pressure, whatever it is, are so-called closed loops. The most efficient closed loop system I know in America is the one that takes taxpayer dollars, pays them to a government employee, siphons off a couple percent of that through compulsory union dues, hands them to politicians who will then vote for more and more and more of the same. It's been working for a long time. It's time to interrupt that loop in the public interest, and I hope this is going to happen. Americans rightly worry about the undue influence of special interests in our politics. Often they are correct. The most powerful, effective special interest in America today is government itself and the unions which have grown up inside it and around it. They're the number one donors of money, number one providers of muscle. In our state, their contracts frequently include the right to take time off to politic and lobby. And it cannot be said they are operating in the interest of the taxpayer or our economy or the broad general interest of the American public. 6 years ago, on my first day in office, I struck down the Indiana collective bargaining statute. I confess to you, I thought a long, long time before I did it. We had many, many, many other reforms and changes. We were just on fire to bring to our state. We did. And I was worried about a scene just like the one in Madison, engulfing all that and stopping it all in its tracks. Ethics reform and a better business climate, getting on top of our broken, bankrupt state, turning state government upside down across all its vital services. But I was well advised to do it and do it then. It's the best move I've made. Today, a state that was broke is solvent. We never raised a tax throughout this whole recession. They're lower today, in fact, than before the recession started. The lowest property taxes in America tonight. We have fewer state employees than we did in 1978, and yet I can prove to you service is better. I found out yesterday that when we closed the books on 2010, the total payroll expense of Indiana state government, not adjusted for inflation, was $75 million less than it was in 2004. I've been able now to say to people with some real confidence, you know, go for it. You'll be amazed how much government you'll never miss. I'm sure glad we got Portman where we've got him, because we know that a very parallel and larger, of course, in scale, debate and confrontation is on there. And the Friends of Freedom are not in the best position. After the blitzkrieg, I once called it shock and awe statism of 2 years ago now, the spring of 2009, in which not only was a massive stimulus program sold to America, now turns out to have cost literally hundreds of thousands of dollars for any job they can even claim to have created. Not only was government ballooned enormously, but entire industries were taken over in law or in fact. Housing and banking and student loans and 2 car companies, health insurance before they were done. You know, for the administration to say, as it just did, let's freeze part of that spending is breathtaking. They want to freeze at a level, Rob, 25% bigger. Do you know anyone who thinks the federal government was too small in 2009? I said it's like somebody whose weight exploded to 500 pounds says, well, I think I better quit gaining. No, no, no. That patient doesn't need behavior modification, needs bariatric surgery. And I'm glad we've got Portman there to help show them where to start. But all they have to do is freeze or hold on to the spending they have, and they will have the monstrous federal government that they have sincerely, I guess, always believed was best for America. The regulations they have put in place and the hundreds more that are coming, if they're allowed to happen, will hogtie the American economic engine at just the wrong time. We don't have a prayer of dealing with the debt we have piled up for ourselves in this country without a roaring period of strong economic growth. The Obama budget assumes it. It assumes a boom, basically, and there is not one in prospect. It takes, on their own numbers, it takes a boom to get to disaster. So it's going to take a double boom to bring the debt load we are facing down from its crushing levels. And I already mentioned health care. All they have to do is hold on to what they have done, and you will see the private insurance markets, the health care of this country implode into essentially the single-payer system they wanted in the first place. So we got a big job to do. And history says it won't be easy. I am not the great philosopher or historian of political philosophy, but I've read a little bit. And so have you, and you know that Alex, since the first Greek, whoever it was, coined the term democracy, about 2 minutes later somebody said, well, that'll never work. Maybe for a little while. Cute idea, Dimitri. But it'll never fly. Because eventually, this idea of government by consent of the governed will founder in one of a couple ways. Either a majority will discover they can plunder the rest. They can expropriate their earnings and wealth, vote it away from themselves for their own benefit, and the whole system will eat itself. Or in a very related fashion, the virtues, the character, that gives rise to freedom in the first place and gives rise to economic success, self-discipline, personal responsibility, the willingness to think about the future before you think about the present, to think about your children more than yourselves, that these precious character traits will wither away. It'll die of its own success, the skeptics are fond of saying. It'll succeed all right. Freedom will produce material gain in ways that tyranny never could. And that very affluence, the comfort that comes with it, will lead to an erosion of the traits you need to keep it going. So the issues that Rob Portman will soon be helping lead on are really the biggest issues I think we face in a long, long time as a country. You know, past all the budget stuff and what's the right place of unions and all these important questions, there are a couple that are even larger, seems to me. One is, who's in charge here? Some of us were raised to think that public service, like so many of you are actively involved in, God bless you, is what a free citizen does, probably not all his or her life, but with part of their life. As someone says, it's the rent I owe a free society. And you take up public service, not to tell other people what to do, not to dominate them, to take money from them and redistribute it to others because you're smarter about where it will be most productively used. No, you take up these duties to support the important parts of life, to support the free, private, productive sector. If we do it well, if we have fair, clear boundaries and rules and laws, and we enforce them fairly and equally, if we create the conditions, the optimal conditions, whereby men and women of enterprise can create wealth for each other, that's excellence in public service, or so I was taught. But there's a different view, and it is manifest in this administration. It is sincerely held, by the way. Strongly as I disagree with it, I don't doubt the sincerity of those who believe, again, standing in a long lineage of thought, that society works best if the best and brightest, the smartest, our benevolent betters, I sometimes think of them, who want nothing more than to just take charge of the world and our lives for our sake. If they get the power, the authority, the money to do that. And so we're going to have that discussion, I think, as a people here soon, because it's being forced upon us by the consequences, by the debt, by the burdens that that approach has piled up on the rest of us. And the closely related question will be, what kind of people are we? Are we still the people of Valley Forge and Gettysburg and all the years in between? Are we still the people who insist on our own freedom first, on making our own decisions, recognizing there are risks that attach to that, and there may be consequences that are unpleasant, but we don't expect our fellow citizens to solve each and every one of those for us at their expense. We will take care of those to whom bad luck comes, and we will pitch in, as Americans uniquely always have, to see that no one suffers unacceptable hardship. But will we be the sort of people who can summon the discipline, as we have not lately, to pay our own bills, not to deposit them on the innocent young people who are coming up behind us? I'm betting on Americans. I really believe this. This is not, I'm not on a stump, so it can't be stump rhetoric. It is something I honestly believe. I think I have seen it in our state. People are prepared in a way that sometimes our political class doesn't give them credit for, to hear new information, take in new facts, come to a conclusion that bets on the future. If they're not, we better go find out, because the hour is late. The duty is ours. I wish this were not true. In a purely theoretical sense, it is our opponents who would have the best position to go tackle the terribly difficult problems that we face, to reform the so-called entitlements programs. I don't like that word, by the way. We need to find another one. George Carlin, rest his soul, used to say, what's another word for synonym? I guess when I step back from it, I don't think as an American you're entitled to anything except life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Beyond that, we do, thank goodness, all we can to help people to whom bad luck comes. And we'll always support that. But our opponents are not interested in doing this. I believe they, with total sincerity, are ready to accept a diminished America, an America permanently in hock to people elsewhere, and therefore permanently with a larger government, a weaker defense, and a smaller role in the world, in a more multilateral world as they would have it. If that's not your vision of America's future, then maybe you'd agree we've got some real work to do, and it will be up to folks like us to do it. I'm very optimistic about this. Just as I'm optimistic for Ohio, I'm optimistic for the Midwest, optimistic about the whole nation. So you tell Rob, hang tough. You tell Governor John, doing the right thing, hang in there. And as you get the chance, you tell our fellow citizens that there's nothing standing between America and another century of greatness and world leadership if we can just act like the Americans we've always been and tackle the very manageable problems ahead of us while we still have time. Thank you so much for this great opportunity.
Thank you very much, Governor Daniels. You can all be seated. We have a little bit of a newfound tradition here in Hamilton County, Governor, and that is we want to present you with a small gift. You know, we know you know a couple things about basketball over there in the state of Indiana, and you even got a pretty decent football team there in your hometown of Indianapolis. But right here in Cincinnati, we have the defending Central Division champion, Cincinnati Reds. So we want to present you tonight, Governor, with your very own Cincinnati Reds jersey. And I want to tell you that we had some discussion about what number we ought to give you, Governor. And some folks said we ought to give you the number 12 because some folks think that we want to hear your name more in the year 2012. But the number that I thought was appropriate was the number 4 because we know you have 4 beautiful daughters, Governor Daniels. So presented to you as your own personalized Cincinnati Reds jersey. Governor Mitch Daniels. Sure. You get the bag too, Governor.